if you watch it and you listen to the stories, they really connect, not just to gay people, I think, but people who just don't understand. Because everyone knows everyone hated a poof, didn't they? But I don't think people knew just how dangerous and horrific it was.
Yeah.
And that it is only better now because we make it better. And we must never stop making it better. We must never be complacent. If anything else, this documentary, I think, makes me more political about making sure we never let anyone treat us that way again.
What was the actual process of going out when someone had the idea of going, okay, let's tell the story looking upwards instead of looking downwards as history normally works? How did you find these amazing people?
Well, that's really interesting, because when we normally make a normal history documentary, it's very top down. We tend to start with an idea and a commission, and then we read lots of books, and we talk to lots of experts, and we think a lot, and then we create a narrative, and then we go and find that narrative in the world. And with this, it's a crowdsourced film, and it's sort of bottom up rather than top down. So what we did was build a website first and ask people to submit their stories, and the stories were around the objects that meant something to them. And there's this sort of, you see, everyone's got something that they're doing stuff with, and these objects, then if we'd have done a normal history documentary, we'd never have found Jeremy magazine, because you know, we wouldn't have heard of you know, that little stash that's tucked away by Stonehenge in somebody's bungalow, and you know, we wouldn't have seen Sue's clubs, and so what people did was send us in things to the website, send us in images, video footage, and the team looked through and found the stuff that felt interesting and new, and you know, at the same time you've got to tell a story, and I had rough shape for how I sort of wanted it to move, because you know, there are certain things you can't not mention. You can't not talk about AIDS, you can't not talk about women having their children taken from them, but we then left it fairly open, and we just, you know, the film gods sort of were kind, and all of these lovely things that people wanted to share with us, and felt, yeah, I want to tell you about this, I want to show you this, and it'll show you a facet of my life that you've never seen before, and our lives, and that was the real joy of it. So I think it was just, I slightly fell in love with everyone in the film, because everyone just shared all this wonderful stuff with you, and at least it sort of allows you to tell this well-worn story in a slightly new way, I guess. So yeah, it's a real, it's a different way of doing it, but I think it worked.
Sure does. Sandy, I wonder if I could ask you, what was it that prompted you to share? Because the older ones of us, we come from a time where we didn't share those things. What made you want to share it with everybody?
I think it was because on the gay scene, or anyone who was gay at that time, like I came out in 1970, and there was a bar called the Lisbon where a lot of gay people went. In fact, I was a barmaid there for a short time.
Right.
And the woman that was running the place, on the first night, she said to me, you get a few puffs in here, but they don't bother anyone. and I ended up laughing with them, you know, just how they came about. So that sort of seemed to settle me into me. You know, I've got no family now, I had to reinvent myself. But I was happy in a different way. There was a club that got opened in 1971 called the Bar Royal. A guy called John Powell opened it. There was wall-to-wall queers. Everyone knew each other's names, their family name and their gay name that they chose to have. Usually for men it was a woman's name, you know. And every night we were in this club, and we became a family as much as a community, because we were so we were so hated. Once you walked out the door, you were a different person. But when we were in this club, we were having a ball. We were ourselves. We all said exactly what we felt and thought. And then one day when Satyesh turned up, or I got to hear about him wanting to interview me and that, I had all this memorabilia of my original family. I had all this photos, videos, all that of all my mates from in the club who I hung around with, and we all hung around with each other because even your family didn't want you, you know, being next to you and all that one night. So when Satyesh turned up, I was made up that I could get them out and tell them, because we're all in boxes in the back room and all that one, and there was loads of it, loads of photos especially. And it wasn't until, say, the late 80s when I started filming things on videos then. But those photos incidentally are in the Central Library in Liverpool, and anyone can go and have a look at them. All you need is a library card, because I think it's that, they're that precious that people need to know our stories, because knowing other people's stories, it lets you see the full world of people, you know.
Thank you for telling us about it. I think the moral of the story is everyone get out there and share, you know, get those boxes out. We've all got the photos, we've all got the stories, and we need to pass them on for whatever means possible. Susan, I want to come to you next. In case you were thinking I was going to work along the line.
I was thinking that.
I can sense undue relaxation.
Yes. No, I'm not.
So no, you're not.
Yes.
When you were talking to your two wonderful new friends who were angry, oppressed lesbians, it felt to me watching the scene like you were hearing that story for the first time, like you were meeting a new story. Would that be right?
I find it very difficult. As you can see, I cried at least twice during that first episode, and they've cut out a lot more of it, to be honest, thank God. It's just me weeping while talking to incredible people. I think what I really like about this documentary, first of all, is when I spoke to people at Seven Wonder, I wanted there to be women in it, because sometimes women don't appear in these documentaries at all, and we are excised from history. And I think what they've done is found some really interesting stories from women. And I also wanted it to be outside London, because London is not the rest of the United Kingdom. And there's some great stories there from Northern Ireland and Manchester and Glasgow. And it's so important that the gay community is not about London. It's about what everyone was doing in the country, because it was very different wherever you grew up. And these two women were, honestly, I just cried for about an hour and a half, because some of the stuff you can't see there, they would come out of the union, and either the police or the straight guys would wait and beat the living shit out of them for nothing. And I grew up in Glasgow, which I always say growing up in Glasgow being gay is like being a vegan in an abattoir. It was not easy.
Can we just?
But what it wasn't at that point, whilst there was still aggression and I've been spat at and all that stuff, there wasn't that outright, we can kill a poof and nobody cares. And these two women, despite how many people know, this is why I think it's so important, I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry, darling.
How many young people now would put themselves in harm's way like they did? They went out, that woman jumped on someone's back to stop someone being beaten up. It is incredible. And they've been waiting 30 years to tell their story, and I got to listen. So sorry. They deeply affected me, because without them, I generally, they did what people wouldn't do necessarily, and as a result of them, I have a better life. And to watch these stories of invisible people who painted lesbians are everywhere in Manchester,
what a glorious, beautiful thing to do. And so it was the first time I'd heard that story. Thank you, darling. Such a gentleman. I didn't know, and I grew up in Glasgow, that happened.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could walk out of a bar in 1971 and the police could beat you up, or you could get a frontal lobotomy, or you could disappear and nobody would give a shit. And to hear those two women talk about that and why they did what they did, I think is the bravest thing I have ever heard in my life. And they are wonderful women.
Yes. Maybe, I'm not suggesting civil disobedience of any kind, but maybe we could have a yellow paint, lesbians are everywhere, National Day,
Yes.
you know, yellow paint
be
everywhere.
I think this is a very different documentary, I think, in that if you watch it and you listen to the stories, they really connect, not just to gay people, I think, but people who just don't understand. Because everyone hated a poof, didn't they? But I don't think people knew just how dangerous and horrific it was.
Yeah.
And that it is only better now because we make it better. And we must never stop making it better. We must never be complacent. If anything else, this documentary, I think, makes me more political about making sure we never let anyone treat us that way again.
Hear, hear. Stephen, I have to ask, so did you finally pluck up the courage to go into Brief Encounter? Did you finally...
Oh, back in the day. Oh,
Yeah.
God, yeah. Couldn't keep me out of there.
Yeah. Then I think we've probably met before in that case. Yeah.
I don't recognise your face.
Well, was there a parallel experience to Susan? Did you feel you were hearing stories that you didn't know before? I mean, for me, Susan, it makes it, because we're slightly different generations. You know, I also remember the first time I did a theatre show in London. I had to make a curtain speech to the audience, telling the audience, please make sure you walk back to the tube in groups of more than 10 people, because the people over the pub have heard that there are queers in the building, so we had to protect the audience on the way home. So, but for Stephen, were you hearing new stories?
I think Susan kind of hit the nail on the head there by saying the whole idea about this project. I wanted to hear new stories. I didn't want to revisit the same old faces that we normally see, who say the same things or in slightly different ways over the years. And what really attracted me to the project was the idea that, as Satya said, it was an open forum where anybody could have sent in a suggestion, an item of something. Then Satya and his team would break them all down, and we would have the humble opportunity of meeting these people. Like the interview that I did with Sandy there, I mean, that we spoke for nearly 2 hours. So this is nothing. And I got to read some of the divorce papers and the court proceedings, stuff that I didn't even think about. And that moved me, but thankfully, I don't cry.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
But the documentary is separated into Susan cries, Stephen doesn't. Susan cries.
And so it was quite an eye-opener for me as well, to kind of wonder how this would all fit in. And in the same way that Susan said that I was really keen to have the programme feature people from different walks of life, and as brilliantly done by Satish, people from different generations throughout the period we're talking about, because in a way we can kind of pretend and sort of celebrate and acknowledge the fact that things have changed, but we can't ignore the fact there are people in our lifetime who are still around, who've got such important things to tell us, to remind us that we can never go back to where we were. I did a thing on the weekend for Pride in London, which was a very joyous event, lots of whistling and flags and whatever. but then you don't hear these stories there. And I think to get that kind of balance, particularly for our younger generation, I think it's quite important. And I was sat here, obviously, now I've seen the programme myself. I've never seen it with this many people, and I could feel that I've got goosebumps now. I could feel the kind of emotion going through the room, the bits of laughter were, the interest in the stories. And I just have to say, for me personally, that because I didn't write the script. This is all down to this man. And I think the way that you've weaved this together and told such an important story, I think is absolutely fucking brilliant.
But there is also, you know, let's be all Hollywood. There's a lovely team. There's a wonderful team of brilliant, talented people, especially my brilliant, talented editor, Lawrence, who just works magic with all of that footage. And but yeah, like a wonderful, amazing, clever group of people who feel things. And, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Stuart and I are friends. We're in the thick of, because it's the 50th anniversary of the partial decriminalisation, we're in the thick of people remembering and talking about gay history, lots on telly, lots on radio, things here. We've met at previous events here in the season, here at the BFI. How does it feel that, I mean, you're one of a very, very distinguished and very small group of people who were core to the flashpoint of social change, of really the sowing the seeds of gay liberation in its classic form in this country. How does it feel, I mean, emotionally feel to you now that these ideas of talking about change and then celebrating change and arguing about change are now reaching out in such a massive way through this summer right now?
Well, altogether it's been a very exciting year for me, and I've met lots and lots of young activists and I started being an activist again myself after a 40-odd year absence after gay liberation, and it's very uplifting and wonderfully rewarding. And because of my book, which came out last year, which was a history of gay liberation called Blowing the Lid, and I've had people come up to me and say, "Thank you for doing that. You don't know how much it means to the community. You've given them a gift. You've given us all a gift." Just by showing how things were in 1970 and what we were up against. The one marvellous thing about then was that we were all so absolutely 200% confident in our fight, which I don't find nowadays. People are a bit nervous, I think. I've met a lot of women who are sort of tending to be feminists, think of themselves as feminists, but actually they haven't done the hard work of looking at what feminism is and looking at what feminism has achieved in the last 40 years. And feminism has gone ahead, miles ahead of anything that men are examining about masculinity. But altogether, I'm having a marvellous time.